Hello everyone, Janet Barker here. I know my videos have been lacking lately, and it's probably not going to get any better anytime soon because starting on the 13th of October, I believe, that's when we're going to start getting our second truck in at work, which means that I'm going to be getting a lot more hours and a lot more early starts in the day. I wanted to do an Afterthoughts video on Godzilla Rulers of Earth comic series, because Volume 6 had been released probably sometime within the last week or so, and I thought it was supposed to be released today. I just wanted to give a few thoughts about what I thought about it, and yeah. Godzilla Rulers of Earth was drawn by Matt Frank, with some additional art by Jeff Zornow. You can find Matt Frank on DeviantArt. His username is Kaiju Samurai. They started off as comic books. It's like the longest running Godzilla comic from IDW, starting in 2012, I believe. I don't have the original issues because I didn't get into Godzilla until 2014. But they released these compilation books, and with the finale finally out and the last volume out, there's a grand total of 6. But this is volume 1 right here. Probably like my favorite thing about this particular volume, aside from all the monsters that they introduced, like Gigan and Kumonga, along with Godzilla, obviously, along with establishing the story, Matt Frank gave Zilla probably a much better fight than what he got in with Godzilla and Final Wars. Like him or hate him, Zilla is still a very good kaiju in my opinion. And I'm only saying that because, yes, I did see the movie in '98 and thought it was awesome. But even though now that I'm older and I've seen it since then at least once, it could have been a lot better. But I also had the Godzilla animated series on DVD. And Zilla Jr. is definitely superior to his father in any way, shape, and form. But I'm just glad that the fight here between Zilla and Godzilla was a bit more fair than in Final Wars, because quite honestly, the battle in Final Wars was just a spite fest from Toho. And really, like it or not, Toho is indeed responsible for Zilla's existence. They were the ones who asked TriStar to do this. But this fight just was a lot better, in my opinion. He doesn't have Junior's breath attack, which I think would have been awesome. But this Zilla pretty much is just a composite character between Senior and the one in Final Wars. If you really need me to tell you some of the good points for Zilla, I would have to say that he may be lighter, but he's also faster. Godzilla is a powerhouse, but he's what you call a mighty glacier. He hits hard, but he moves slow. TV Tropes describes Zilla as like a fragile speedster. He can't really take a whole lot of hits before he has to retreat, but I think he can definitely take more hits than, say, a kaiju like Kamacuras, who's just a giant mantis. Zilla having his burrowing ability allowed him to get the drop on Godzilla a couple times here. But the way he's presented in Rulers of Earth shows that he's smart enough to know when to fold him. This fight pretty much ended up in a draw because he ended up retreating. Godzilla did lay a lot of hurt on him, but they also allowed Zilla to get a few hits on Godzilla as well. So for me, it's really not a matter of who is better in a fight, because they both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses. It's just good seeing him getting a little love. As a matter of fact, I also wrote on TV Tropes that this series gave Zilla a few more fans than he probably did back in the 90s, except maybe Junior. Junior probably won Zilla a lot of fans as well, because even people who hated the movie agreed that the cartoon was superior, because they gave Zilla a breath attack and his own rogues gallery of Daikaiju to fight. I also, in this issue, you get a look at Destroy's aggregate forms, and also this entire series actually included the first time you see some of these Daikaiju in comic form at all. I wouldn't know any of them right off the bat, who appeared in other comics and who didn't, but just the sheer amount of kaiju that I've seen here was pretty awesome, like Manda, the sea dragon. Manda was a pretty good character, especially when he was teaming up with Titanosaurus and Godzilla. It was also kind of interesting to learn that some of these are actually rogue gallery transplants for Godzilla. Godzilla's one, and the Gargantuas, they were in other kaiju films, but they were not in a Godzilla film. It's just the background story here is typically an alien invasion, like a lot of the movies from Heisei and Millennium, but it's a story that works well. It was just pretty cool seeing a lot of these monsters in this comic book format. I have yet to see Godzilla vs. Destroy, but I've actually looked them all up on the Wikizilla Wikia, but look at that! Destroy is pretty badass. I can definitely see why he's very memorable as the kaiju who killed Godzilla's son, and just the fact that, damn, he's definitely a tough cookie. I don't even have to see the movie to know that, or even read up on him to know that. My only real disappointment with the series is the fact that Mothra was put on a bus pretty early. She showed us up in some of the earlier battles, like the one with Destoroyah here, but she wasn't there for the final battle. She was actually killed off later on by Batra. I guess you could say spoiler alert if you haven't read the rest of this. But yeah, it was kind of sad that the big trio of Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan weren't together completely, but it was just kind of interesting to see how she did help in her own way. This is probably one of my favorite pages in this book. The Mothra larva getting interested in Godzilla's tail. I think it's actually kind of a nice callback to the numerous times that the larva have fought Godzilla. And one of their techniques is biting his tail. It's never worked. All around, I believe the story started off pretty good. Another thing that I like about this series is the various shoutouts. Like the very first one, but in the very beginning, you're not going to be able to see it very well, but this door right here, the room number is 1954, and if you're a Godzilla buff, you definitely know that 1954 was when Godzilla came out in Japan for the first time, when Japan was still picking itself up from the atomic bomb dropping. But yeah, a lot of shout-outs. You see monsters in there. Gigan shows up. He pretty much is like a recurring thread in this, but you also see him in both his other forms. Aside from this thing. One thing I will say about Gigan is that he is the kaiju that I cannot take seriously because he just looks blooming ridiculous. He's just not good. I told a friend once that Gigan is to me what Hedorah is to my friend, the one kaiju I can't take seriously. But after looking them up again on TV tropes, Gigan is presenting in Rulers of Earth. Has the competency that he has never really shown in any of the films that he's ever appeared in. Volume 2 introduced me to a lot of kaiju that I haven't seen in any films. Yet. Like Orga. Orga is... If it weren't for Biollante already taking the nightmare fuel position in my head, Orga would definitely be it, but Orga is just disgusting. The thing that I really liked best about this particular volume was the fact that Rodan first appears properly in this one. Rodan is probably like my favorite kaiju out of all of the monsters that I fought with or against Godzilla. Rodan is probably my favorite. It looks like his design here borrows from both his classic look and probably even Fire Rodan a bit, especially with the spikes on his belly. But definitely more of his classic look. He spends several pages in the beginning of this one fighting Varen, and then it introduces the Green Gargantua, Gyra. Gyra is what I said before. He is a Rogues Gallery transplant because he and Sonda had actually born from parts of Frankenstein's monster, who had become a kaiju in another film, but neither of them had ever fought Godzilla in one of his films. They were just transplanted to fight him in the series. A few kaiju, such as Super Mechagodzilla 2 and Hedorah, they don't really show up in this one, but they are mentioned and even drawn in a couple places. I can definitely see why. Hedorah is just one of those really gross ones, but for me, Gigan will always be the one I can't take seriously, and Orga is still a bigger nightmare. Gigan appears again in his upgraded form. That's actually his Millennium look before his upgrade, which you'd actually well have seen if you had seen Final Wars, when he's then upgraded into upgraded Gigan with his buzzsaw hands. The thing that I really don't, the reason why I don't really care too much for Gigan, despite him being like a dirty coward and such, is just the fact that I know he's a cyborg, but the buzzsaw in his chest. I'm thinking, why? How am I supposed to take something like that seriously? As a matter of fact, my nickname for him is Space Chicken. Should probably make it Space Buzzsaw Chicken, really. Like how my nickname for Space Godzilla is Crystal Space Clone, and King Ghidorah is King Space Dragon. But even as much as I don't like Gigan, I pretty much give them these nicknames only get fun and out of love because I like King Ghidorah. He's a dragon. But he is from space. And he calls himself a king. So hence King Space Dragon. And Crystal Space Clone, again, same deal. He's a clone of Godzilla. He has crystals. And he comes from space. And like I said, it's really only good fun that I give them these nicknames, even if they do sound mocking to some people. But if I really wanted to mock a monster with a nickname, it would be Gigan, because really, Space Chicken can't really take this one seriously. I know he's tough, but... and the series makes him a bit more of a threat, but to me, he's just not the kind of kaiju you could take seriously. Kudos to anybody who really likes him. I just don't care for him at all. I just don't really understand him at all. This volume is pretty much the one that really ramps up what the conflict is with the Cryorgs, which is the invading alien species. Gigan is pretty much their attack dog. They were the ones controlling him this time around. It also introduces what is probably my least favorite Godzilla mech, even over the tin cans. The first one, which is the first model by Moguera. I did see Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I know what Moguera can do, and I think it's pretty awesome that he can do these things. It's things that even Kiryu can't do. But the design for me has always been just a little odd. Like I said, it's really nothing personal against the mech. I just don't really care too much for the design. Yeah, this volume kind of ramps up just how much of a threat Gigan is and how much of a problem they're going to be having with these aliens. Gigan, in this particular volume, is also working together with Orga, who you can see right here. Orga really is kind of disgusting. I mean, especially if you look right here. He's opening his mouth and trying to swallow Gigan, his own ally. This thing is ruled by hunger. Especially after I looked him up and saw that he's true. He very easily turns on his own ally because he's trying to cut his hunger down. But Orga really is disgusting. I mean, oh man. It's frightful. Orga, I think, was actually destroyed in this one. Yeah, he was, because of the appearance of the so-called Power Rangers reject Jet Jaguar. Like Zilla, Jet Jaguar got a little bit more fans thanks to this series, but I could definitely see why people didn't like him at first, because I can definitely see why they would think of him as a Power Rangers reject. His design's a little off-putting for me, but I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that he's a product of his time. If they were designing him nowadays, he probably wouldn't look so derpy. But yeah, Jet Jaguar was the one who ended up, he was the one who ended up destroying Orga entirely. I know in both canon and in with this one, they kept Orga's ability to regenerate intact, but I think they just didn't want to bring him back afterwards. It was actually kind of cool to see Jet Jaguar and Godzilla team up to take care of Gigan after Orga was destroyed. And that's the other thing I really like, is the team-ups. The 6th volume had a team-up that I'm not sure anybody really saw coming until they saw the, probably the previews for it in the original issues. But some of the team-ups in here are pretty interesting. I think Jet Jaguar and Godzilla did team up in a film, but I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. It's probably not likely that I ever will. But probably the funny thing is that after Gigan flies the coop towards the end of the book here, Godzilla has won the fight, but then it's like, even then they imply that he pretty much loses his temper. Judge Jaguar ends up trying to talk him down, gets blasted by his atomic fire for his trouble, and then that's a beautiful punch. I mean, he knocks him out, pretty much. Knocks him out, carries him out to sting, and just dumps him there. Which I guess is a callback to the film that they appeared in together. But, damn, beautiful punch. Matter of fact, I think TV Trope said that Judge Jaguar had taken a level in badass just by doing that. After that, Judge Jaguar kind of takes a backseat for a while. We then see that the Cryorgs were also in league with another alien species called the Devonians, who are an aquatic race. Now that I have the 6th volume, I'm probably going to be going back to rereading it all, because I can't quite remember what happened to the Devonians, because they weren't there for the very final fight. I think they were actually taken out of the battle pretty quickly, because they were going to be pretty much trying on the Cryorgs, I forgot. But then they introduced the stuff of my nightmares. Violante. I know in some games she's actually listed as an ally, but here she's an enemy. And I think in Godzilla vs. Violante, she was supposed to be the hero somehow. Again, I'd have to see exactly why Godzilla would have been the antagonist that time. But Violante looks like a freaking nightmare to me. Probably even more so than Orga, who's also pretty nightmarish in himself. I've heard her roars. That's the stuff of nightmares, in my opinion. And even so, I think she scares me less than the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's. But since I haven't been able to locate that movie yet, all I have to really go on with her is this thing. This really makes me appreciate just how much bigger she is than Godzilla. And she definitely does look like she's 222,000 pounds. Very, very heavy. But honestly, I feel bad even for the sheer brutality in which she was actually taken out here. She has Godzilla on the ropes. He ends up burning her. I mean, she burns. Matter of fact, in Kaiju City, it was the rulers of Earth Battle that no, actually I was wrong. She actually popped up in India, and then she ended up getting thrashed by both Kiryu and Zilla, but that's for another time. I mean, take a look at that. You see Violante in the background burning in agony. And honestly, some of it's pretty sad, even though I think she's really just like a badass out of hell, pretty just frightening. Then this one ends up with Gezra, Manda, and Titanosaurus coming back. Honestly, I kind of agree that they need to do something with Titanosaurus. It's his first and only film appearance, involved him being mind-controlled, and he's actually a really peaceful monster. And I actually recognized his roar from Phantoon from Metroid. The Metroid series does have a tendency to use kaiju roars for their monsters as well. If you've played Super Metroid and met with Phantoon, and then you've seen Godzilla vs. the film with Titanosaurus in it, if either one of them sounds familiar to, that's because they share the same roar. I think Mothra's cry is actually the cry of the baby Metroid from Super Metroid. Volume 3, Volume 3 was pretty cool as well. Matter of fact, the artwork that you see here was actually done by the other artist, Jeff Zornow, instead of Matt Frank, and he actually does do a couple pages, a little bit in here. You can actually tell which artist does what because their artwork looks different. Jeff's artwork is like off model compared to Matt's. This one picks up where the other one left off with Titanosaurus, Manda, and Godzilla attacking. Lucy, the character that we followed, one of the characters that we follow here, she ends up getting separated from the rest of her friends, and she ends up on Infant Island, where she meets the tiny priestesses, the Shobijin. Mothra reappears with her larva on Infant Island. But as you can probably surmise, she ends up dying, and her larva end up staying more or less in the background. They're not really as involved as she was. It also marks the first appearances for Borosaurus and Megaguirus, but only in a flashback. They don't really appear yet they don't really appear in the present times for a little bit. It also marks the first time we see Megalon and King Caesar, again in a flashback that the Shobijin were using to explain what was going on, really. Same with Ebera, giant shrimp. Again, he's another kaiju that I really don't see any sense in, but he probably makes just a little bit more sense than Gigan. Baragon and the Bachelor larva also appear in flashback. The thing I really liked about this was the fact that it really portrays just how gentle Mothra is. I mean, only in this kind of medium can you actually see somebody actually touch her, because in the movies she's just a puppet. So you never really see the human characters interacting with her like this. It was just really sweet. It really gives you the sense of just who Mothra really is. Sanda and Gyra reappear in this one. And then Godzilla shows up naturally to fight the Gargantuas. They do a number on him just by double teaming. And it kind of gives you the an understanding that Godzilla, for all his power, just isn't very maneuverable or very fast. The Gargantua's double teaming him ends up with him getting hurt quite a bit, but he also dishes plenty of damage back. I mean, look at that. He's getting a train to the face by Sanda of all kaiju, because Sanda apparently is the more peaceable of the two. The thing that I found kind of interesting is that in my research for Sanda and Gyra, Sanda in the film that they appeared in stopped at nothing to beat Gyra senseless, because Gyra eats humans and Sanda doesn't like that. But just the fact that he's treating Gyra like a brother was kind of interesting in light of what I know now. Again, the plot thickens with the cryorgs and such. I'm probably not going to be going too on much about what the storyline is, but because again, it's just an alien plot. Here we get to see Baragon appear. I did a little research on him. Oh, also, Kiryu. I got so excited when I saw that Kiryu showed up. Even though I did see him on the cover, I just couldn't wait to actually see him. Because Kiryu is really... he's the best. He's my favorite. He ends up fighting Baragon in Paris and ends up capturing him to take to Monster Islands. It's just... I'm just really liking it. As a matter of fact, I think according to this, the Devonians not only had Godzilla, Manda, and Titanosaurus working for them, but I think they also had Destoroyah working for them. It's kind of hard for me to really know just how much control they had over the kaiju or not. And then where you get into a three-way fight. Now, this is another reason why I gotta reread these, because not only is it Godzilla and Manda going up against Godzilla underwater, but Destoroyah shows up. This was also... oh yeah, Titanosaurus then shows up. So it becomes quickly a four-way fight. Somehow Destoroyah ended up regrowing his horn after getting ripped off the first issue. Oh, that's it. Destoroyah ended up breaking down into several of his aggregate forms. And he goes on the usual rampage, attacking the humans, and being all around freaky as hell for crustaceans, mutated by the Oxygen Destroyer. Three-way battle between Godzilla and his three adversaries continues. This panel, pretty cool. If you're actually able to get these and you see that panel, you'll think that was a beautiful punch, Titanosaurus. For a kaiju that was meant to be very peaceful, and it pretty much shows that he can be kind of a badass if you put him in the right story. Destoroyah ends up turning back into his final form and just going absolutely crazy, and he gets stopped by a Jet Jaguar, who delivers some pretty awesome punches, and who takes control of Kiryu. He shrinks down and takes control of Kiryu and vaporizes the thing. And Godzilla's still getting his ass kicked by Titanosaurus. But then the military drops missiles on them. Titanosaurus and Godzilla and Manda end up retreating. And Godzilla takes the blast. And that's the end of that one. This is volume 4. This one picks up after a time skip. There's another reference to 1954 and then 1984. I forgot exactly what this... oh, I forgot what the significance of that date was, 1984. You'll have to look it up on your own. It starts off with Lucy having a bit of a nightmare of Godzilla attacking and going on a rampage, and you can tell that Jeff was the one who drew these pages. It takes place 4 years later. It starts off on Monster Island. Just from this one page alone, you can see Gyra out in the bay. Rodan has captured a whale to eat. Sanda, Baragon, and Kamanga seem to be having a bit of a tussle. Kamanga, I'm surprised it's not the kaiju I fear the most, because I hate spiders. And giant spiders always tend to freak me out. But Kamanga is just... definitely not the one that scares me more than Biollante or Orga, but definitely giant spiders. Goes up to the Arctic Circle, and bada bing, bada boom, look who was in an ice and look who is frozen as an ice cube. If that's not a reference to Final Wars, well, I don't know what is, because I think it was also in that one that he was also frozen into an ice cube before breaking out and wreaking havoc again all around the world before taking on Kaiser Ghidorah. And it brings in Anguirus. Poor Anguirus, he is like the punching bag. He shines best in double teams, but alone he just gets wailed on a lot. And it also marks the appearance of the tin can known as Godzilla, the first one. And just the fact that it looks like a tin can, it just looks hideous. This is the reason really why this is my least favorite Godzilla model, Godzilla model. But I just can't help but feel for Anguirus, who's another one of my favorite kaiju, because he's fighting by himself, and he's always getting wailed on. Really, to give Anguirus a chance to shine again and bring him back. Like, the only other time that he really even showed up was in Final Wars. This volume also introduces Minette and Mallory. I guess if you've read the previous series, which was, I think it was called Kingdom of Monsters. For me, these two are new, but apparently there are a couple of psychic humans who either control or work with Batra, which I'm actually kind of surprised because Batra hates humanity. More like he hates every living thing. It's pretty much just the reason why he's Mothra's opposite number. But yeah, Anguirus ends up getting his butt kicked in Russia. Like, really has his ass kicked. The Monster Island team goes to pick him up with Kiryu. They end up running into a few problems. Not really. Really, Anguirus was just used as the punching bag for the Cryorgs under the guise of a Russian businessman who invented the Mechagodzilla model in this continuity. He was just used as the punching bag to test them out, and then we have a whole squadron of them go to take on Godzilla. Honestly, you'd think these aliens would have learned by now that you just can't kill this thing. Whatever you can dish out, he'll dish right back in war. Very few kaiju have managed to kill him, and the only time humans were able to kill Godzilla was with the Oxygen Destroyer in the very first film, and they've never succeeded again. The first couple chapters bounce between Russia with the Monster Island team picking up Anguirus and the fight that Godzilla is having with the Mechagodzilla Squadron. They actually do a pretty good job at doing a whole lot of damage to the big guy. They actually shot him in the face. The Cryorg general, who's in charge of the invasion force, ends up revealing himself to the humans. And we get a sense for what Minette and Mallory are really like. They really are kind of creepy. Sort of like how Batra is Mothra's opposite number, they are the opposite number for the Shibo gene. Godzilla's back on his feet, and pretty much just keeps on wailing against the mechs. Then look who then shows up, the Mecha King Ghidorah. It's actually explained in the very last volume that the whole reason why the Cryorgs are even invading Earth in the first place was because King Ghidorah destroyed their home planet. So I'm really not surprised, because Ghidorah does what Ghidorah does. He makes it his business to go out throughout the galaxy and destroy planets. Some of the background for the reason why Mecha King Ghidorah is even here was the fact that the Cryorgs found him unconscious somewhere. They had Gigan take off his center head, and bada bing, bada boom, mechanized King Ghidorah, who does his thing with Godzilla. Oh, it was actually here that it was explained. But at least I got Gigan right, his involvement here. I know this is pushing 40 minutes, I apologize. But we only have like 2 more volumes to go, and I'll try to keep it reasonable there. During the fight with Mecha King Ghidorah, Anguirus shows up out of nowhere to help his buddy. I will say right now that Anguirus is his best dog. But here's a very funny thing. Godzilla is using Anguirus as a flail, without Anguirus' permission. And Anguirus doesn't really seem to care. Afterwards, he didn't try to wail on Godzilla for using him that way. This is volume 5. The artwork was again done by Jeff instead of Matt. You can already tell just from the cover that Megaguirus ends up showing up in this one, and she does. This one starts off with Lucy getting a vision when she joined the Psycho Twins' hands together, which, in light of reading the very last volume, serves as foreshadowing for that volume, for the final battle. She sees King Caesar and Godzilla taking on the forces threatening the planet. For whatever reason, the Mothra larva are also featured in this vision, but they don't even show up for that battle. Anguirus and Godzilla take off to sea and end up splitting up. Then, lo and behold, Space Godzilla finally shows himself after being teased all the way back in volume 1. Space Godzilla, I have seen that movie. He is definitely a jerk. But when it came to the last volume, I will tell you what my surprise was there. One of my favorite things about that finale. Space Godzilla ends up attacking the Cryoworks ships, and then they stick Gigan on him. They have a pretty good fight, and Gigan shows just how competent he is. He's still in his Millennium form here. He hasn't been upgraded yet. Space Godzilla really knows how to hold his own. After that short skirmish, it cuts to Godzilla fighting Ebirah, aka the giant shrimp. And then it cuts back to the Space Goji Gigan fight. And after Space Godzilla ends up ripping Gigan's arm off, he starts heading to Earth. And after Godzilla shows up on this island where the Monster Island team is, Godzilla shows up with Ebirah in tow, and then they see that these people have some giant eggs, and that actually heralds the appearance of the Meganulons, which are the progeny for Megaguirus. So while the humans are not only having to deal with these two going at it, they have to deal with the Meganulons. And they start doing what they do by they start swarming Ebirah and Godzilla both. But it doesn't take long for Megaguirus to show up. This one badass dragonfly. You can definitely see how fast she is. For a queen dragonfly, she is pretty darn cool. As a matter of fact, I need to see which film she appeared in, because I might actually want to watch it. Ebirah retreats to sea, so it's pretty much down to Godzilla versus Megaguirus. She ends up knocking him out, taking her taking him back to her nest to feed to her young ones, and the Shobijin are reunited with Stephen Woods along with the larva. In chapter 3, Batra finally appears. Batra is one of my favorite kaiju, not just because he's Mothra's opposite number, but because his design and pretty much just his overall purpose. I still think it's kind of interesting that he's allied himself with 2 humans, when he's pretty much like the enemy of life in general. He really only cares about the Earth's well-being. But it was just kind of interesting to see the amount of control that they have over him, or if he's acting of his own will, the fact that he is acting on their behalf at all. The Shobijin explained to Stephen Woods exactly what happened to Infant Island. Batra ends up attacking. Mothra is still very weak from her battle with Destoroyah. Just like in Godzilla and Mothra, the Battle for Earth, she and Batra go at it, but she ends up losing that fight. The larvae do try to help her, but Batra is just too strong. Mothra ends up destroying herself trying to stop him. And just the fact that we see Batra rescuing the Psycho Twins shows that he survived. It cuts back to the pit that Megaguirus dropped Godzilla in. He's trying to get out. He can. He's getting swarmed. But then he manages to turn tails. He kills her progeny. She goes on the attack. He attacks right back. And then that's when the invasion force, the Cryogs, really start ramping up their attempts to take over the world by sending in these things, the trilopods. That's when you know that the battle is finally on. The trilopods are kaiju that were introduced in this series as the attack dogs. Their purpose is to harvest kaiju and to serve as food for their queen. They suck the blood from kaiju that they capture to get at their DNA. They eventually, some of them will even fuse together to become hybrids of each other, to become hybrids of these kaiju, I mean. Like this one, I believe, actually took its cues from Megaguirus after attacking her. But it kind of shows you just how big of a deal they are. It then cuts to Monster Islands, where Batra is again on the attack. And it's also where the Shobijin and the larvae went to for shelter after Infant Island was destroyed. I think the cool thing is that Batra is being heralded by a thunderstorm. Gives you a sense of dread for what's to come. Batra is really only there for the larvae. Everyone else is just fair game for him. But after that, it then cuts to the trilopods attacking Space Godzilla and taking his DNA structure. Not only are they getting his body, but they're also penetrating his crystals as well, his shoulder crystals, for that DNA base. And the trilopod hybrid form is something else. It almost makes me feel bad for him, because he's probably there for the same reason that the Cryogs are, to destroy or take over the world. But that was the end of Volume 5, and now for the finale issue. Again, I kind of like how they put my favorite underdog on the front cover, but It's just awesome. Front cover has Rodan, Godzilla, Kiryu, the larvae, even though they weren't even involved in the fight at all, along with Zilla. It starts off with them continuing to harvest more kaiju like Baragon, the Gargantuas. The Crywork Emperor actually showed up in the last volume. They're just going crazy, capturing and taking the genetic codes from all these monsters, including Rodan, Baragon, Gondosira, all that kind of thing. You see several of them already. This one also shows the lengths that the twins actually went for Batra. Again, I'd probably have to read the series that precedes this to see exactly how Batra saved them, because that's just not in his nature. Even after seeing his film, it's not in his nature to care about living things. Just the planet itself, living creatures be damned and such. They use their psychic powers to tear this Godzilla, the Space Godzilla trilopod hybrid apart. Fight is still going on. Space Godzilla is ended up in the same city as Godzilla, so they're kind of fighting these trilopods. Not really together just yet, but then they pull a true enemy mind fashion. They pretty much just fight together for only a brief time, and then Godzilla is just like, screw this, I'm out of here. This volume actually introduces Gorosaurus properly. He's another kaiju I really can't take that seriously, because he's essentially a gigantic Allosaurus who can do stuff that a kangaroo can. So it's like the kangaroo kaiju. If you like him, fine. It's just that he's pretty much like Anguirus. He's kind of mundane, really. I'm pretty sure if I saw his film, my opinion would probably change a bit. But there's this ongoing invasion going on. You see these two are getting ready to team up after they've been captured in crystals from the trilopod hybrid. And quite honestly, after reading this, I said, never thought I'd see the day where Godzilla and Space Godzilla would work together. Again, I know this is really taking a very long time. If I thought about doing a part 2, I would have ended this a long time ago. But it really didn't take long for Godzilla to say, screw this, I'm out of here, and he just disappears and is never seen again. I'm probably not going to go on for too much longer, just so I can get to the finale. But this also provides a little bit of background about why Mallory and Minette hate Mothra so much, and why they care about Batra a great deal. It looks like they lost their mother to a battle between Mothra and Kamacuras, and that is why they despise her and just want to see her dead, and why they're still after her children. This one also properly introduces King Caesar, who is really like the pretty much like the final piece of the puzzle that they need to stop the threat. Minette and Mallory, in my opinion, really should have quit while they were ahead, because they really seem to think they could bully King Caesar. And well, I can see why they don't really care for him either. It's only because he is wailing on Batra here. I mean, King Caesar totally rocks. But if they seriously thought they could bully him, they were pretty much wrong. Now, the one thing I don't quite understand is that Batra's getting ready to attack King Caesar, but then he suddenly stops, and then he leaves. He abandons them. after they were saying that he would never let them down. It's never made clear why he retreats, like what suddenly got his attention that he would suddenly just retreat and such. But after that, it kind of seems like King Caesar ended up killing them both. You know, there's no way that no human's going to walk away from being slammed by a giant kaiju hand. King Caesar ends up getting captured along with Lucy and Christina, and I think it was Jeremy, I forgot. But he ends up getting captured by the cryorgs. The trilopods we're now 3 trilopod hybrids with Godzilla's DNA. And we get the backstory about why the cryorgs are there in the first place, with King Ghidorah taking out their planet. There was a trope with that. I think it's an outside context villain. Meaning they don't have a context. They don't have anything to compare Ghidorah to. They've never had to deal with something like him before. So while the battles are going on with Godzilla getting even more exhausted, Jet Jaguar shows up with a ship's anchor to help Godzilla out, and then we get to see the guy again in his upgraded form with his buzzsaw hands, like in Final Wars. There's a bit of infighting within the cryorgs, the general versus the emperor. The one chapter ends with Godzilla completely surrounded by trilopod hybrids. He doesn't seem to understand that the ones that look like his friends really aren't his friends. Chapter 5 opens up with him trying to reconnect with the hybrid that took Anguirus' DNA, and obviously that's not really Anguirus. And he ends up getting attacked on all sides by these monsters. King Caesar has been brought back to the hive and is pretty much tearing the place apart, and he starts freeing all the monsters that were captured, like Kamacuras, Titanosaurus, Baragon, Rodan. All the ones that would be involved in the final battle are freed. Godzilla's getting overwhelmed, but then he is aided by Mugiwara and Kiryu both to give him a bit of a breather. They start taking on a lot of the cryorgs themselves, the trilopods themselves, with him helping them. And this is probably another thing that alarmed a lot of fans, but when the world needed him most, Zilla came back to help fight. And he fights spectacularly. Quite honestly, I don't think anybody was really expecting him to even appear again after showing up in issue 1. But then he comes back and proves again that if you let him shine as his own kaiju, he can kick all kinds of serious ass. So while Jet Jaguar, and Godzilla are taking on the trilopods on the outside, Gigan is attacking the cryorg fleet because he's no longer being contained on the moon by the general. And he's just all around just running amok. There's a whole lot of infighting still going on. Towards the end of a chapter here, both Mugiwara and Kiryu are destroyed, and Godzilla is just ready to get down to business. I mean, I can already tell that he's exhausted, he's getting pissed off, and he gives a huge cry, which the monsters inside the hive hear. And then, boom, they come to his aid in one of the best ways possible. Again, if you're actually able to get these on just this one page here, coming to Godzilla's aid is King Caesar, Varan, Gorosaurus, Kamacuras, Gyra, Sanda, Kome, Camoedas, who's the turtle, Baragon, Kamunga, Titanosaurus, and Anguirus, along with Rodan. Kind of forgot if I already mentioned him. With King Caesar leading the charge, even. Jet Jaguar is continuing to help Godzilla fight while all the other monsters show up to help the king of the monsters take out these trilopods. And what follows is several pages of pure awesomeness. I mean, I see Titanosaurus here taking on his own trilopod hybrid. Baragon and Kamunga are taking on each other's hybrids, which I think was pretty awesome, pretty cool with what happened there. And while the Titanosaurus hybrid is throwing up smoke and causing Godzilla and Varan some issues, Zilla comes charging through and tears him apart. It's just so cool how much love Zilla has gotten in this series. There's a panel here where it shows Anguirus, Baragon, Godzilla, and Varan taking on their own hybrids, trilopod hybrids. And then, holy shit, you see that? That is the trilopod queen, Vegeta. If you can see any of the kaiju down here, she is the biggest thing I have ever seen. She is probably like the biggest kaiju in any medium. Forget Biollante and Destoroyah. Vegeta, who is an American invention for this comic, is the biggest kaiju in this entire extended universe. She leaves them all behind. It's like, holy crap. And like any true queen, Vegeta ends up getting Zorg-rushed by all the kaiju, all the monsters of Earth. And while they're dealing with her, Jet Jaguar's trying to take care of Gigan. They're having their own separate battle nearby. Vegeta ends up proving to be just way too much for Earth's monsters, and Godzilla's like, that's it. Pretty much, this final battle with Vegeta pretty much ends with Godzilla tearing a hole inside her, going inside, and then turning himself into a nuclear bomb. He just let loose all of his power and destroys her. It's implied that he died here, along with Stephen Woods, who also perishes in the battle. The only reason why I think so is because Godzilla's allies end up gathering around him, from Titanosaurus to Zilla to King Caesar to Rodan, and it looks like they worked together to move his body out to sea, where he was sent out. But if there's one thing that we know about Godzilla is that he is never dead for long. The entire series just ends with the very last panel of Godzilla being at the bottom of the ocean, probably waiting for his next turn, probably waiting for the next time. And that was Godzilla Rulers of Earth. I highly recommend it. Even though some of the characters like Mallory and Minette were introduced in Kingdom of Monsters, I believe, as well as a girl named Allie, I think you can pick this up without any prior knowledge to it and still be able to follow the story pretty easily. If I ever get around to doing another video, it'll probably detail my humanized Godzilla fic, Kaiju City. I've stretched this out for an hour already, so I am very, very sorry that it did drag on this long. In hindsight, I probably should have done 2 videos, each covering 3 volumes, but it is what it is. So until next time, this is Jana signing out.